Okay. So we have Parashat Pinchas. A lot of powerful lessons to learn from the Parasha. The first lesson is from Rabbi Leeor Dahan. He observes something very apparent in the beginning of the Parasha. So just to set it up, we have, of course, Pinchas, who last week does a pretty incredible, courageous action, taking the matter into his own hand and mamash killing. It's we read it. You read it. It doesn't sound like whatever. He killed them. Okay, next parasha, the guy killed two people, right? And it wasn't simple. It was an operation. It was mamasha Mossad style takedown that he pulled off. Maybe that's where the Mossad gets its koach, the spiritual strength of Mossad. You say, how are they so successful? They go into people's homes. Like I read somewhere, 10 people were murdered at the same scientists. They just came into their homes and killed them. I don't know if it's true or not, but I'm saying, like they say, they don't say these stories about me and you. So it's got to have some truth to it. So Mossad's able to do all these things. Where did they get the koach? Pinchas ben Elazar was the first Mossadnik. He was able to go into the tent. He fooled Shevet Shimon. He said, who's better? Why Shevet Shimon any different than Shevet Levi? Only you could do Isurim. We could also do Isurim. And they said, Yalla, beseder, itiu pushim et hadavar, let him in. And they let him in, and it was a nis. It really was a miracle. It made no sense. They shouldn't have let him in. It's like just letting someone walk into the White House. You don't just let someone come in. And he killed them. He killed Zimri, he killed Cosbi, miraculous fashion. The Torah tells us that the plague that happened where people were dying left and right, it was corona on steroids, right? It was in the course of a day. People just falling left and right. 24,000 people. These are staggering numbers. These are numbers that is hard to even put into terms. If you take a stadium, certain stadiums, you could fill up the whole stadium. 24,000 people is a sea of people that just died from Am Yisrael, primarily from Shevet Shimon. Some opinions hold everybody was from Shevet Shimon. But certainly primarily, how do we know? Because of the numbers. The numbers of Shevet Shimon decreased significantly. And that's what the Gemara points out, is because of the whole Maaseh of Zimri ben Salu, who was the Nasi of Shevet Shimon. So Pinchas does this incredible act where it literally stops the plague. And what does Am Yisrael proceed to do? Did you see this guy? This Pinchas. Who does he think he is? Ben Putizeh. He's the grandson of Yitro. Yitro was Oved Avodah Zarah. Pitem Makalim LaAvodah Zarah. He used to bring fattened calves for Avodah Zarah. And he killed somebody. He's a murderer. Killed somebody in Am Yisrael. Nasi, not just anybody. Nasi Shevet B'Yisrael he killed. Who does he think he is, this Pinchas? Am Yisrael, not only do they not show gratitude, quite the opposite, they essentially speak negatively and call Pinchas, maybe in nicer sanitary terms, they called him a murderer for killing Zimri ben Salu, a murderer of one of the leaders of Am Yisrael, which is pretty strange. The only thing I could imagine is imagine a person who, Rahman al-Litzlan, he's put in a position and an Arab comes along, Arab terrorist murderer with a knife, wielding a knife, coming to stab him. And somebody in the audience just picks up a gun, shoots the Arab before he's able to stab the person. Is there any right mind that someone would call him a rotzeach? You would call the person who killed the terrorist a murderer? You're crazy. And yet the person who was saved, would he ever do such a thing? He'd be kissing his feet. Thank you so much. You saved my life. I appreciate it. Of course he would never call him a murderer. This is the Am Yisrael. Their necks were on the line. Who was going to die if Pinchas didn't do what he did? It was Am Yisrael that was going to die. So he saved them. The person who saved you is the one that you call a murderer? How do you think of saying such things? So Rabbi Leeor Dahan, he says something very, very, it's just a true reality. There's no other way to say it. It's just a true reality about us, about human beings. And we have to know it about ourselves, because if we're not in touch with who we are, we're going to do this. And that is, a person has a very difficult time showing gratitude and always gravitates to the negativity. You can see half a picture and You see only the negative. They didn't notice Pinchas saved their lives. Okay, maybe that wasn't in the forefront of their mind. The only thing they could speak about was, how can he do such a thing? How can he do such a thing? Who does he think he is? Yeah, but you see the result? You see what happened as a result? People were dying. He saved everybody. Yeah, but how could he kill? That's not that's not civilized. That's not the proper way to act. They couldn't see beyond that, even though it was them that he was protecting. It was them that he was saving. What does that mean about us? I mean, this is Am Yisrael is an all-star team. These are not simple people. These are the highest of all people. One person in Am Yisrael is like 1,000 people in greatness and in stature in any other time in history. These were people that were diamonds. And yet, the ability to recognize good, the ability to focus on bad is so great. And that's what a person is. It's so easy for us to fall into this trap where we're looking at the negativity, we're looking at the person who we're supposed to be thanking, and at the same time, we're not only not thinking, we're seeing negative. In the times of the Brisk Rav, in the city of Brisk, there were a lot of fires. And it was unusual because a city having a fire is not an unusual thing, but to have a fire and then another week in a different part of the city another fire and a third one and just a string of fires all the time, they realized that this was not something that happened because someone left the stove on for a little bit too long. There was some reason for it, and the story goes that many years before the fires of Brisk, there were tzarot in the city. There were problems in the city. And it was, the Jewish community was very organized, very together, isolated from the rest of the community. This is before. This is a long time ago. We're talking about hundreds of years ago. And what happened in Brisk is they were tzaddikim. There were great people there. So they saw that there were a lot of problems happening left and right and all bunched together. On Ma'avda Aretz, they did an autopsy. They essentially asked themselves, what's going on? What is happening to us that we're having all these issues? So they didn't look like today. The first place you turn to is the doctors. If it's politics, you turn to the politicians. If it's something that has to do with courts, and you turn to the lawyer. It's not what it was. They turned to spirituality. They said, okay, there must be some things happening in the city that we're not taking care of. Let's send out messengers, and they'll go around the nights and see what's going on. Maybe there's some choteh, or some bad sinner who's doing serious averot, and we got to get rid of the averot. They sent messengers. One of the messengers came back. He says, you won't believe it. You won't believe it. I passed by the house of the chief rabbi, who at the time was Rabbi Leeor Sirkish, the Bach, Beit Hadash. This is going back, this story in Brisk, 500 years. Leeor Sirkish. I went to his house this night, and all the lights were off. How could it be? The Rav of the city went to sleep without learning Torah. He's supposed to be learning. I've been to this city, I've been to that city. I've seen all the Rabbanim sitting and learning Torah. They said, what? The Bach was going to sleep, not sitting and learning Torah? Now we know why this is happening in our city. The next day, which was Friday, they got up and they said, you're no longer welcome in the city. Goodbye. And they kicked him out of the city. They kicked the Beit Hadash out of the city. Why? It's because of you all this tzarot are happening. You don't sit and learn. What was the true reality, Rabotai? Listen to how backwards this was. The truth of the matter was, the Bach wasn't the problem at all. The Bach was actually sitting and learning in his attic by the moonlight because the city was not paying him the salary that they promised him. So he didn't have money to buy candles at that point in time. Although there's a different story. It says the Bach was very rich, but there were points in time where he wasn't. And he didn't have money to buy candles. So he would learn by the moonlight. And therefore he would learn in the attic, and they didn't see that it wasn't that he was sleeping. He was Be'emet learning. And who was Be'emet at fault? The same leaders that sent out the messengers to see what's going on in the city. Their problem was that they weren't supporting their Rebbe enough. And he had to resort to this. And that's why all the tzarot were actually happening. And in the meantime, what are they doing? They're blaming the Bach as the reason for all the problems. I think this, Mama, I read this story like literally this week. And I was thinking to myself, this is a story that is mamash happening before our eyes. You look what's going on in Israel. I don't know how many people are following, but like there's big tzarot right now. The Bnei Shivot, they're like cracking down and they focused, and this is the lesson that they took. Before October 7th, you were right. After October 7th, everybody needs to go to the army. Even the Charedim, and of course now there's huge amount of tension. And who gets the blame for everything and all of the problems and all of the reasons of society? The Charedim are the issue. They are the problem. Instead of thinking to themselves, the Charedim are the solution. They're the only reason why we're managing to survive Bichlal in this land against all odds, against all enemies from all corners of the world. They hate us from Europe. They hate us from certainly from the neighbors, all of the surrounding areas. As there's no shortage of enemies. They're just putting out on the news that Syria now is becoming a war zone. It was always a war zone, but in relation to Israel, it's becoming a war zone. It's crazy. The Houthis. Who ever thought that? What does that have to do with anything? Like, who are they? What do they have to do with Israel? They're behind a bordering state of Israel. They hate them too. Iran is everybody knows all these enemies, and we're still surviving. What do you think? Who do you think is the reason for that? It's not the Charedim that are the issue. It's not the people that are religious. It's not them that are creating the problems, but they're the ones that are scapegoated. They're the ones that are always going to be the issue. Even during COVID, same exact story. Why is COVID so bad? Why is COVID so bad? This is true in America and it was true in Israel. In Israel, they were saying it's the Charedim. They have their families, they have their this, they're always together, they're not, so many excuses. They're the ones that are responsible for the spread of COVID. It's always being blamed. And here in America, we had people with the short-term memory. Everybody's Cuomo, vote for Cuomo. It's only a few years ago, it wasn't even that long ago, where he was the biggest anti-Semite. Everybody was taking him to Supreme Court. He singled out literally the zip codes right here, where we are. And like Chavetz Chaim was like cornered off. A lot of people don't know, but the Maaseh, with the whole Chavetz Chaim, they did it b'chokhmah. They knew that the whole thing was bogus. The whole thing was ridiculous. So on paper, they were following the rules, but they knew when the inspectors were going to come. The inspectors came. Everybody went to the Ezrat Nashim. They did a little rotation, and then they came back to the main place. So the Maaseh, you have to know. Use judgment. You're not supposed to take the law into your hands. But when they admit something as ridiculous as what they did, blaming the religious people for COVID. In the meantime, what were they doing? They were saying religious gatherings, both here in America and in Israel. Religious gatherings, at some point, they said no gathering, and then they said religious gathering can have 50 people, 40 people. In the meantime, they had protests happening for, I think, Black Lives Matters or something like that. They had thousands of people. No, they're allowed to protest because there's an injustice that was done. They're allowed to protest. Israel, by the way, wasn't better. They were allowing gatherings of 250 for, what they call it, cultural centers. I don't know what they branded it. Cultural centers were allowed 250 people with no questions asked. But Batei Knesiot, max 50 people. It's ethnical experiences. You were there. Like, this is ridiculous notions. All these nice fancy terms to basically say religious people are the ones that are responsible for everything. Again, this was the whole mentality of the greatest people. They were susceptible to this disease. So what does that mean? That means we have to be aware of that. And we have to realize in our own lives to be able to look and to say to ourselves, just parenthetically, anybody who wants to go take, feel free. You don't have to feel like you're being held hostage. You can go. It's an open session. You go, enjoy, come back, and yochelu anavim v'yisbau. You don't have to sit here like it's Matan Torah, but enjoy. So I think that's the message behind what Rav Steinman was saying. That we really have to be focused. We have to realize that in our own lives, there's a lot of times people do good for us, and we sort of blame them, especially it could be with wives. Wives get a lot of heat and a lot of blame for things. Why isn't this right? Why isn't that right? You're always doing things wrong. The opposite. A person should have the opposite type of mentality. The good, the bracha that's happening in the home. What's the reason for the bracha in the house? It's the wives. That's the reason for the bracha. So if you see certain things not being done exactly right, not to make scapegoats for the issues, but to confront issues if they're really bemet issues and to handle things appropriately. So Pinchas was scapegoated unfairly. He was a hero. He should have really been thanked. But on the other hand, Am Yisrael didn't take it in that direction. Now, And it's an amazing thing. The Torah really tells us there's almost like this parasha doesn't really make so much sense in how it starts off, because it's really in the middle of a story. Where the way it worked is Parashat Balak really should have ended with Bilam, right? But it didn't. It ended with the advice of Bilam and then Benot Moav, and then Pinchas goes and kills Zimri ben Salu, and the parasha. Wait a whole week. Okay, now let's continue and let's talk about Pinchas and what happened again. Like, why did you stop the parasha right in the middle of the story? Like, this is he killed him. Moshe Rabbeinu is spoken to about Pinchas getting an amazing reward. It says the pshat. I think this is an unbelievable pshat. When it comes to this mitzvah in particular, which is the mitzvah of kannaut, bekanoid kinati means zealousness. Pinchas acted in a very zealous fashion. Now, an action of zealousness, you have to be very careful. I didn't tell them to leave and not come back. Where did they go? They went and they didn't come back, huh? Got to be careful. An act of kannaut is something that a person has to weigh and measure. The pshat in the parasha having a week break is because Pinchas did something. It was a pretty spectacular action, but we really have to contemplate. Was it 100%? You have to look at it from this angle. Was it 100%? It took a week of analytics to judge and to assess. Bemet, it was the Shem Shamayim. Okay, now you're going to get your reward. And that's the Torah teaching us a lesson. Whenever there's an action that we do in the form of kannaut, in the form of, but it's for the sake of Hashem. I'm doing this l'shem shamayim. I have to be criticizing of my wife and her levels of tziniut because it's the man Hashem. It's the man the kids. It's the man the. Double check yourself. Have a week of analysis. Is this really l'shem shamayim? And this is a great story that I think highlights this point. And Reb Shalom Shvodron said over the story about himself. If he said it about himself, Mistama, we could say the story too. I do believe it's probably a little bit of hyperbole, but the Yesod is for sure emet. And as I once heard from Rabbi Kaufman, don't ever let the truth get in the way of a good story. You know? But he said this story. The truth is he said this about himself. Elama, it's you'll see and you'll judge for yourself. The story goes as follows. Of Shalom Shvodron, people should know, he was a great orator. He was a great martzeh, darshan, would captivate an audience. Very, very powerful. He was also a kohen, and he was also an incredible chazan. Like for Yamim Noraim, he had a powerful voice, and he was a beautiful voice. He was a chazan, he was a whole package. So sure enough, he was invited to come to a certain city, and that Friday night, he was invited to the biggest Bet HaKnesset in the city. And he gave them divrei Torah, he was mechazek, then they had a meal together, and he went to two other shuls afterwards because they said it's a unique opportunity, give us some divrei Torah. And sure enough, he spoke. Shabbat morning, he goes to a certain Bet HaKnesset. And he goes there, he's expecting, most places you go to, Kiryat Torah, you would read Torah on Shabbat morning. He was a kohen, it was almost natural. Give him the first aliyah. He's a kohen, he's a rav, he's a talmid chacham, he's everything. So he expects the gabbai to come over to him. The Ashkenazim, they have this thing. They say Ya'amod, and then they say the person's name, and then like, oh, you act all surprised, and you go up. So he sort of, the minute he said Ya'amod, he was kind of like already like, okay, they're going to call me. But to his surprise, they called someone else. HaKohen, Peloni, Ploni, Ploni. So he was a little bit hurt. Like, well, they should have called me, really. Okay, said that maybe the guy had some sort of thing. Probably because it's Musaf, it's Shabbat Rosh Chodesh, and there's a special Musaf. So probably what the Gabbai is going to do is going to give me Maftir, and then he's going to give me Musaf. Because Maftir and Musaf is going to give me that. That's probably why he didn't call me up for Kohen. They wanted me to read. Okay, Beseda. He didn't make a big deal out of it. The Kriyat Torah ended. It's a time for Maftir. It's a chutzpah. The Gabbai not only doesn't give it to him, he gives it to himself. The Gabbai goes up for Maftir. Yes, the Gabbai goes up for Maftir. He says, Tov, Beseda, he probably had a yortzeit. And he needed aliyah. Okay, could be. He didn't make a big deal, but he felt a little bit. Probably he's going to give me Musaf. That's probably it. He's probably going to do Musaf. But after he finished the brachot of the Haftarah at the end, Yakum Purkan, Gabbai says it. Gabbai takes Musaf. He's like, what is this? The Gabbai gave away the Kohen, took the Maftir for himself, and now he's taking Musaf. So he was a little bit hurt. That was Musaf, as I said, it was of Rosh Chodesh. So Gabbai finished the first three brachot of the Hazara. He said, Ha'el HaKadosh. He said, Tikanta Shabbat. He's supposed to say, Ata Yatzarta. Now, Rav Shlomo, who was a Hazan, Ata Yatzarta. He saw that he was still continuing, Ata Yatzarta, Ata Yatzarta. He said, that Ata Yatzarta. He said it 3 times. One keneged the Kohen, one keneged the Maftir, and one keneged the Musaf. It was an Ata Yatzarta, but it was an Ata Yatzarta where he derived benefit. He felt good about it. And he realized, he stopped himself to think, sometimes in life you have to correct. Admit, like, what are you supposed to do? Of course you correct. But you have a benefit from it. You enjoy that correction. You were upset and you got a gishmak out of it. That's not kanaut. That's not the kanaut that we're talking about. Pinchas's kanaut was 100%. And we have to stop. A lot of times, I remember once having a conversation with somebody very prestigious in the community. It doesn't really make a difference, but it surprised me, like the level of, what's the big deal? There was a sort of nonchalantness about, what's the big deal about being L'Shem Shamayim? It's not so hard to be L'Shem Shamayim. And I got taken aback. I was mamash taken aback. It's not so hard to be L'Shem Shamayim. You know how many influences and biases we have that we don't even realize that it takes sometimes years to uncover and to reveal. It's so easy to be L'Shem Shamayim. If you have such an attitude, then you really don't understand anything about a human being and how difficult it is. Even Pinchas, it was a big question. All of Am Yisrael thought not. It took HaKadosh Baruch Hu to come and say that. It's Bemet L'Shem Shamayim. How can it be so easy to be L'Shem Shamayim? It makes no sense. That a person can even stop and think that way, that they're so easily, after what? Everything we do is so biased in selfishness. How do you think that you're L'Shem Shamayim in anything? Without analyzing, without introspecting, without really going. Rav Shodron is saying about himself, I had to correct. But I got benefit. That's not L'Shem Shamayim. L'Shem Shamayim means 100%. And to be able to understand those biases and to have that really change the way that we think is quite an avodah. It's not such a simple thing. As I mentioned once, I think this is a great lesson. People should you have to understand this mentality with Torah and mitzvot. That the Gemara tells us, Bedinu sheitol Pinchas scharo. It says about Pinchas that he deserved the reward for his action. And the commentaries jump on this. And they say, Pinchas deserves reward for his mitzvah, and what? Everybody else in Am Yisrael don't deserve reward for their mitzvot? Of course. Any Jew that does a mitzvah deserves reward for it. Why does the Midrash and Rashi bring down that he deserves reward? As a Pshat says of Naiman, he says, incredible. Every person that does a mitzvah should know that the mitzvah itself is the reward. A lot of times we get used to this thinking, I'll do mitzvot here, my reward is shamu le'olam haba. We don't understand that the mitzvah itself is the incredible reward. The opportunity to develop a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the greatest pleasure and enjoyment and satisfaction that a person can have in this world. It's a gift that we are able to do to keep Torah and mitzvot. It's mamash something special that we are lucky as the nation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to have 613 avenues and ways and directions to keep Torah and mitzvot. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu really can say, that's good enough. What do you need more? That is your gift. The fact that I gave you and afforded you that opportunity to keep Torah and mitzvot, that's enough of atzlacha. That's dayenu that you have that already. Why should I add to that? But still, HaKadosh Baruch Hu does out of chesed. He gives us in olam haba. But we should really understand, in general, it really wasn't necessary. The mitzvah itself is the reward, is the connection. A person has to tap into that and realize that opportunity, that ability that I could pray to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and He listens to me, that I could do any form of mitzvah and HaKadosh Baruch Hu values it and is proud of it and holds it and cherishes it and builds my relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Instead, HaKadosh Baruch Hu could say, forget you and your mitzvot. I don't need you. I don't need your mitzvot. Goodbye. I'll run my world the way I see fit. You could do whatever you want. And we don't have to have any relationship. The fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu humbled himself, really, to create this relationship is something unique. Do you have a relationship with the President of the United States like that? He doesn't care about you. It doesn't bother him. It doesn't animate him. It doesn't motivate him. If you do anything, or if you don't do anything, it doesn't make a difference. He doesn't care. You don't have a relationship with him. Hakadosh Baruch Hu could have been the same. He didn't have to. It didn't have to matter to him. It's not important to me. Do mitzvot, don't do mitzvot. I'm the king of the world. Who cares if you do it or not? You have a relationship with Hakadosh Baruch Hu. It matters to him. He's saddened by your averot. He's happy with your mitzvot. That's a big deal. That in itself is a tremendous reward that we have that kind of an opportunity. So what? You want reward on top of that? That's chesed. That's kindness. It's a big missed thing because a lot of times when we give over chinuch to our children, we're sort of in that mentality that the reward will be in olam haba. But we have to really focus on driving the point home, whether when we're doing mitzvot or when our children, let's say for example, let's say you have somebody sick in the house. So I remember once, I heard from Mashai Cohen that it's a huge ma'ala. You want to teach your children bitachon, how to trust in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, how to pray properly, do it in your house. Like an example, let's say there is a problem, the family has an issue. So take your children and say, okay, this is our issue. Obviously you can't do this or anything, you use judgment. But certain things you can say, this is the issue right now. Let's take something small. Okay, they're looking for a parking spot. They're by the city and there's no parking anywhere. We need to find the parking spot. So say to the children, you know what, we have an issue right now. Let's all turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in tefillah. And you see for yourself that it works. Tefillah works. And that will be the lesson, that will be the way to inculcate bitachon, emunah, the power of tefillah, by doing it and constantly doing it with your kids. And you show them that it's a real thing. It's not something that the rabbis talk about. It's real life. Maaseh, halakha maaseh. It makes a difference. It changes the equation. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is listening. He'll answer the tefillot. You show that to them in practice, it's a amazing dynamic. So sometimes in life, it's sort of like we come to our children, we're like, oh, I prayed for this, it didn't work out. It didn't happen. It wasn't what it needed to be, and we're disappointed. We're not focused properly. We're looking at tefillah as like a means to an ends. The ends is, I need this, the tefillah is a means to get there. A mitzvah gets me to a place. I learn Torah because I want to become very wise in Torah. I want to learn Torah so that I'm able to do kibud avim probably. So a lot of people, the shelo lishma, the shlom bayit, right? They come to shiurim so that they hear about shlom bayit, so that their husbands are better, their wives are better. Meaning it's a little bit shelo lishma. I'm doing this for an end goal. We have to stop that mentality to some extent. There is such a thing called an incentive, but the end goal is a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You don't need more than that. If you get more than that, it's a chesed. But that ability to have a relationship, if there was no olam haba, let's just imagine, no olam haba, only olam hazeh, dayenu. I have a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's bedinu sheito scharo. That message has to be delivered in our actions and in our thoughts and in our conduct, that the opportunity, even ben adam l'chavero, to help another Jew, the opportunity to help another Jew should give a person such a satisfaction that should empower him. If you took a person who was sad, depressed, was living life and was dragging his feet, and you came to me and said, you know what, I heard something so amazing. I had this incident in my life, and what I did is I reprogrammed my thought. I thought like this, I looked at it from that angle, and you changed his perspective, and from that day on, he saw things differently. You made that person. You should walk around like $1 million. I mean, I took a person who was sad, and I was able to make him happy. The guy was living with financial struggles, and I was able to bring him out of those financial struggles. I was able to give him a job. I was able to teach him a profession. I was able to give him tzedakah. You made the guy. That in itself is so pleasurable, so enjoyable. You shouldn't need anything after that. What do you mean? This is the highlight of my life. I was able to take a person, influence him. Imagine a teenager. You're an adult. You have a teenager in the community, and you sit with him, and you talk to him, and you learn with him, whatever. You influence him, and he takes you as a role model and a lesson. He learns from you, and all of a sudden you became a positive influence on this child who maybe would have gotten involved in things that weren't appropriate, friends that weren't appropriate, now took a completely different path, maybe even ended up in yeshiva, ended up becoming a ben Torah, all of that directly attributed to you. You know what you should feel like? A person who makes a shidduch, you know how you should feel? Wow, I was able to make a shidduch. I was able to be the shaliach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Take two people, didn't know each other, live with each other, have kids, and raise a family. I was a part of that. I have a portion in that. That's incredible. That's an amazing thing. These are all incredible joys when you don't lose your sensitivity. When you're not involved in the physical so much, you don't lose the sensitivity. You have such an enjoyment from the mitzvot, the ma'asim tovim, far more than anything you have in the olam hazeh element of things. It's a greater joy in every sense of it. To be a mentor, to be a positive influence, to be somebody that makes the world a better place is the greater enjoyment. And all of that stems back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because that's the neshama that enjoys that. An animal doesn't enjoy that. The neshama enjoys that. That's the human being. That's the real fulfillment. So an average mitzvah, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what justice, what requirement is there on me to pay back for a mitzvah? The payment is the mitzvah. That is the delicious steak, that opportunity to do the mitzvah. What do I have to pay you for doing something that's a chesed already? Pinchas was the only exception. Why is Pinchas an exception?
This doesn't seem like he had enjoyment in killing two people.
You're not only did he not get enjoyment, he's not allowed to get enjoyment. So Pinchas, because it's a maaseh kanaut, when it comes to kanaut, zealousness, you can't derive any benefit. Even the enjoyment of me having a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's kanaut. Kanaut has to be done purely will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is the honor of HaKadosh Baruch Hu on the line, and I'm doing that. I'm not getting anything. I'm not enjoying. I'm not focusing. Bedinu shitor scharo. Because this action does not allow for an ounce of hana'ah, he deserves to be rewarded. Everything else, the mitzvah itself, the joy of the mitzvah, is the reward. But this is a different story. No, it wouldn't have been. It would have been et biriti shalom, and it would have been the minute there is any derivation of pleasure, it's ritzicha. It's the one thing. It's not bed din carrying out an execution. Whether lishma, shelo lishma, it's their mitzvah. This is kanaut. This is off the record. If it's off the record, it better be 100%. It's 99%. Guess what it is? It's 0%. It's murder. It's either 100%. That's why Zimri was actually allowed to defend himself. In general, a person who's chayav mitah, you kill somebody who's chayav mitah, eno damim. The guy's running after somebody. As the Gemara says, if a person's running after somebody else, eno damim, you killed him. You killed a dead person. He was chayav mitah. The minute he's running after somebody to kill him, he's chayav mitah. You killed him. There's no violation. So here, when he did this action, when Pinchas was killing Zimri, Zimri was allowed to defend himself. It was different. He was allowed to defend himself. And if he would have killed Pinchas, he wouldn't have been chayav in iota. It would have been self-defense. It's an off-the-record mitzvah. And if it's off the record, it has to be 100%. So that's something that I think is very powerful. The Chafetz Chaim brings it out. Oh, yeah, sister, you wanted to ask. So that's actually connected to the next point I was going to say, because the Chafetz Chaim, in his time, there was a story of a person who was a blacksmith. And he had a daughter that was terminally ill. It was like days before she was supposed to die, really. And the doctor said, no hope. She's not going to live. She's too sick. This. We tried the medicines. It wasn't working. He comes to the Chafetz Chaim crying, I need a bracha. Hara, please give me a bracha. I don't know what to do. My daughter's on her deathbed. Please do something. The Chafetz Chaim said, I'll give you a bracha. I'll pray for you 100%. I'm conditioned. Arav, whatever you tell me, I'm doing. Any conditions, my daughter. He said, okay, you're going to take a hammer. You're going to go to the Moadon. Moadon is basically there was a bar. Unfortunately, in those times where the Jews were living, so there were maskilim. There were people that were secular Jews. The beginning of the secular Jews started around that time. And they started centers and recreational activities. What did you call it? Ethnical activities that they started. And one of the places they started was basically a bar, which, it's bar is a sanitary term. It was a place where all the isurim were getting done. So Chafetz Chaim says, if you vandalize this place, basically, I'll give you a bracha. I'll give you a bracha and I'll pray for you. This is the story. This is the story. We don't condone violence here, right? It's good. Okay, so the man, the blacksmith, he said, he took a hammer, 5 pounds, whatever it was, went in there and started smashing things. Now, of course, the maskilim who built the storefront and everything, what are you doing? My daughter's life is on the line, is dependent on this. Anybody that comes near me, I'm going to bust his head open. Nobody said anything. He went ahead and he vandalized the whole place, broke down the whole place. Chafetz Chaim gave him a bracha, bemet nisim happened. Miracles happened. But the maskilim, what do you think? They just sat down quietly. They have plenty of money. The Reshaim always have money. And they rebuilt the place. They rebuilt it, but 2.0. Instead of just being a bar, they said, we're going to make a library. We're going to have an annex. They had their own annex. They made a library, but Sifrei Kfira. These are the types of books that people would read. There was a very intellectual time frame, so people wanted to sound intellectual. So would read these books, and it would take them away from Torah mitzvot. It was the first exposure to the secular world. Many Jews ran after it, and it was a terrible churban. Today, if you pick up one of these books, you'll be like, this is ridiculously boring stuff. Forget it. You wouldn't even, it wouldn't change. Every generation is tested with things that are relevant to that generation. For that generation, it was a big test. For our generation, it would be like a joke. Nobody really. We're vaccinated against that kind of stuff. But in that generation, it was a big problem. So they built a library that had all these books free, on demand, lent out to anybody that wants to ruin Am Yisrael, essentially. So 2 of the students of the Chafetz Chaim, they said, we're never going to allow this to happen. They lit matches. They burnt the whole place to the ground. The whole place with all the books, they burnt it to the ground. You think this is real stuff over here that's happening. The authorities came, arrested them, put them in jail for several months, and they had to pay major fines. After the whole thing, they came back to the Chafetz Chaim. They said, we don't understand. How come the blacksmith, he went, he broke things, he destroyed everything. Nobody stopped him. They let him do it. He certainly didn't get arrested. No fines, no penalties, no anything. And here we are, Kano kineti kinat Hashem. We went again to burn Pinchas ben Elazar style, and we got arrested, we got fined, we got in trouble. Big balagan. He said it's very simple. There were 2 Kanaim in the Torah. 2 types. There was the Shimon and Levi type, and there was the Pinchas ben Elazar. Both did actions of Kanaut. Shimon and Levi, they killed the whole city. Pinchas killed Zimri ben Salu and Kozbi Vatzu. Pinchas was rewarded. Shimon veLevi aru apam ki az. Yaakov Avinu cursed their anger and wanted to distance from them for their action. What's the difference? Is the pshat is Shimon veLevi didn't consult with Da'at Torah, and Pinchas consulted with Da'at Torah. Pinchas, before he acted, he went to Moshe Rabbeinu. Said, Moshe Rabbeinu, Haloli matani bahar. You taught me on the mountain, Kanaim pogim bo. Says, Karaina di galta iu le'avi parvanka. Go do it. Moshe Rabbeinu gave him the green light. He did it. As opposed to Shimon and Levi, acted on their own accord. There's kanaut and there's kanaut. Kanaut, that you take matter into your own hands and you don't get approval from Da'at Torah, is a false kanaut. You could be the students of the Chafetz Chaim, but you didn't consult. You did it on your own. That's not real kanaut. As opposed to the first person, the blacksmith, he asked me. I told him what to do. He did it. Even though it's the same thing. He says, what's the difference? I'm learning from that. Case study. Precedent. No, not when it comes to kanaut. That's the difference between someone who's l'shem shamayim. You're really l'shem shamayim? Go seek Da'at Torah. See what the Torah has to say about it. Is this the right thing for you to do? I'm l'shem shamayim, but I decide what's Da'at Torah. That's not l'shem shamayim. That's by definition not l'shem shamayim. It's a mentality that we have to have. So there's a difference, B'Yisrael. There's a difference between kanaut and kanaut. Some kanaut is solid and on the money, and you get rewarded for it, and the other kanaut not necessarily is the case. Yes. What's the other difference?
The potential hanara they had. Like, we're being affected by this Sifrei Kfira.
The Chafetz Chaim is Adam Yireh La'einayim. He's only able to see what he sees. What he saw was this. This was clear. You didn't consult. You had the opportunity. You didn't consult. Derech Agav, once there was, I don't know if you know the history of the Shas party. Shas party is known that Ravaja started it. Ravaja started it in the motivational sense, meaning there should be a party, and he gathered the troops. But on the ground, there was a man. His name is Rabbi Yitzchak Peretz, who was one of the first ministers of Shas. And he was running affairs. He was a minister in the government because when you get elected, you become, you carry an office and everything else. So he was the first minister of Shas. His name is Rabbi Yitzchak Peretz. And when he was appointed, there were a lot of things. It was breakthrough because a political party that was religious, that carried so much weight, was unprecedented. So these were like real decisions, heavy decisions, very weighted decisions were resting on his shoulder. And he knows that the Torah is dependent on it. Every decision that a government makes can affect thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. It's all questions that are Torah. It's a big mistake. The Hazon Ish says that sometimes people get into the mindset the politicians are the politicians and the Rabbanim are Rabbanim, and the Rabbanim shouldn't get involved with politics. He says that concept is straight from the Haskalah playbook. Meaning, it's totally apikosut. Has no validity in Torah. That outlook to separate the politics from Torah is to basically say, I want to do whatever I want. So the rabbi's opinion don't have any relevance to politics. That's not true. The Torah has an opinion on everything, including politics, and that Torah has to be followed, even in matters of politics. And Bemet, all the parties in Israel, they run on that platform. The politicians are subservient to the Da Torah. If there's a question, you take it to the Gedolim and they address it. So Yitzchak Peretz knew this very well. He said, but there's like questions on a daily basis. It's not like the headlines, but there's on a daily basis, you're dealing with weighted questions that affect cities, affect people, and are real questions. And not always, especially you're talking about in the 80s, the 70s, and the 80s, you weren't able to constantly get in contact with the Gedol Adov in order to deal with the question. So what should we do when we're not able to access Da'at Torah under these cases where we're dealing with real cases that have to be determined very urgently? What should we do? So Rav Shach answered him. He says, I can tell you one thing. You have these questions and you're not able to consult, don't answer right away. Sleep the night on it, contemplate it, and then tomorrow you'll have much more clarity on the answer. It's a perspective. A person sometimes, L'Shem Shamayim, I need to act. You really, L'Shem Shamayim, contemplate it. Think it through carefully. Analyze it. If you're able to consult, then consult. If you're not able to consult, then at least consult with yourself properly. And don't rush to make a decision. By rushing, by definition, that's going to be not so pashut. There's a further element to the Pinchas's actions. One final point is Pinchas prayed to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and then the plague stopped. It's interesting. It says, "Vayamot Pinchas vayipalel v'te'atzar ha'magefa." The power of tefillah, I saw, amazing. The story actually ties in. It's good. We started with Rav Steinman. We'll end with Rav Steinman. The story is as follows. It's a pretty fascinating halacha. This is a real live case that happened. There's a zug, got married. Let's say Tuesday night, as example, they got married. Wednesday morning, they realized they're not for each other. And they went, it was in Israel, straight to the Rabbanut to schedule an appointment for a divorce. Now the Rabbanut gave them a scheduling, which was 7 days, like maybe a week later, a week and a half later. They had a schedule to get divorced. They went to Rav Steinman. They're like, we got a problem. We're in the middle of Sheva Brachot. So, especially Ashkenazim, they do all 7 Brachot no matter where. We have a Sheva Brachot tonight. We have a Sheva Brachot tomorrow night. We already booked a date to the Rabbanut to get divorced. Should we do Sheva Brachot for 7 days? Sameach tesamach re'im ha'ovim, and in the meantime, we're about to get divorced. So what do you think Rav Steinman said?
Do it.
Why do it?
Maybe they'll change their mind.
So said Rav Steinman, amazing. He did say do it. He said, who knows, mi odea, maybe bizchut the brachot that you say in the Sheva Brachot, You'll listen to the brachot themselves, and that will give a person the siyata dishmaya to see that you really could make it together. How long does it take to say the brachot? Sheva brachot. Every bracha is maybe 9 words, 10 words. Some of the longer ones, maybe a little bit more, 20 words. It's a matter of minutes you're talking about. Can make a difference. And Bemet, what ended up happening, they did the Sheva Brachot together, and they saw that, you know what, not so bad. We were a little bit shell-shocked. Now, Baruch Hashem, it makes sense. They stayed together, they built a family, they had children, and they lived happily married after. It's amazing how much a tefillah, how much, you don't have to pray for hours on end. You don't have to be a mikubal for your tefillah to answer. You don't even have to be a holy Jew. You can be a regular Jew, an average Jew. And you put in your hours, 9 to 5, you're kovei, timna Torah, you come to the Beit HaKnesset, you pray for 2 minutes because something's going on in your life. You turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for 2 minutes. The tefillah is able to be answered. There was an elderly lady that lived in Bnei Brak. She was 92 years old. She liked to go on her balcony and look outside. The problem was there was a palm tree in the way. And she asked the neighbors who owned the palm trees, she said, look, it's bothering my view. Can you cut part of the palm tree? Oh, there's a few branches there. I need them cut. The neighbor said, yeah, but they never got around to doing it. She asked a few times. Didn't answer. They didn't do it. So she said, I have no choice. I have to turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. She said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the neighbors don't want to do it. I'm turning to you to find a way to get this done. She said that tefillah. Short, peaceful, no l'shem yehud. A week later, comes along, heat. Sun was otzi chama min altika. Half of the palm tree dried up. All of those branches dried up that she needed removed, and it all fell on its own. Kadosh Baruch Hu did it for her. 92-year-old lady, simple lady, nothing sophisticated. Wasn't a talmidat chachamim. Wasn't anything special. Didn't even say a special tefillah. She said herself, I thought I would need maybe finish the whole Sefer Tehillim. A tefillah to HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes such a difference. Pinchas did an incredible action. But when did the plague stop? Vayipalel. Vayamod Pinchas vayipalel vate'atzar hamagif. I couldn't think of a better way to end than to end with that kind of a story right before the tefillah. Baruch Adonai le'olam. Amen ve'amen. Rabbi Hanina Makasha אומר, יצא הקדוש ברוך הוא זכו ישראל. לפיכך בא להם את המצוות. שנאמר, אדוני חפץ למען צדקו, יגדיל תורה וידיר. אמן. אמן.